Hello again. This is awesome. It's awesome to have you back. It's awesome to know that you want to give me your time again, and I'm really grateful for that. Either you are very good at following onboarding programs, or you have come across a little challenge when it comes to having consistent line thickness when you're creating visuals with Canvas, and you want to know what to do about it. So I'm going to assume it's either one of the two. I'd love to think you're following the onboarding flow step by step, but let's get cracking if it's a specific problem you need to have solved now. As you probably have already noticed, the reason we get the different line thicknesses is when we scale things up and down, and especially when we're scaling up and down different icons all over the place, we start to get like inconsistencies between all of them. Now, I'd say sometimes, often, the inconsistency is really trivial and almost unnoticeable that unless you're an addiction to perfection like myself, you probably wouldn't even bother making these the same. I mean, can you really tell that these are not the same line thickness? If you're a pattern matcher like me, you will see it. But for most people, that's totally passable and people wouldn't even notice it. Potentially that star could be changed, but the one that really needs to be improved in this design is, of course, these stars down at the bottom. So they're the one I want to focus on for today. If I take a copy of this over here so we can work with it, and then I'm going to just make it straight because that's going to make it a bit easier for what we need to do. This is going to involve a little bit of maths, but don't worry, it's simple maths, and your maths teacher from years gone by will be so proud that you are still putting into practice what they taught you, and it's fun. There's nothing too hard about this, and if there is, give me a shout. I can help. We want to understand the difference in size between the size we want and the size it was. So if using Miro, I can find out what the original size of the asset was by clicking this button here and saying original size, and immediately it pulls it down to this. So that's how much we've scaled it up, and that makes sense why the lines are so much thicker. What we need to understand is how much smaller is the original asset than what we've got here. And I'm going to do a guesstimate, okay? It's around about 50%. And we can double check that if we want to by duplicating a second one so that it sits here. And this is double the height. And in comparison to this, okay, we have a little bit of a gap, but it's still, it's around 45% is this one. So the calculation, I put some over here. So the calculation for making thinner lines, which is what we want, is you're going to take the original stroke weight, and I'm going to put them in the right order. The original is 6 points. How do we know that? Because it's listed in the How to Use Canvas Icon Jar Miro board. This one right here. Beep, beep. So you can find it in there. It should never change, but if it does, that's where I'll tell you, also in email. But the original is 6 point, and we know that the difference is around about 50%. So what's 50% of original times percentage height difference? 50% of 6 is going to be 3. 3 points. And if I come into Icon Jar, we find our stars. What we're going to do is we go to the stroke width. You'll probably have it by default set to auto, but you can come into custom and you can change that stroke width. And I'm going to change it to 3. And then I'm going to drag it out from here, and I'm going to move it over into my design. I'm going to do it over here. I don't know where it went. Let's drag it out again. And do this. And we wanted to scale up to about that size. And I'm going to turn it that way. And that's looking pretty good. I'm probably going to duplicate it first. And then I'm going to rotate it over this side, boop, like that. So it's kind of giving a bit more form, like direction towards the middle. But I also think I would like to set them behind the ground. So I'm going to send them to the back. And as my lasting piece for this, I would probably create a frame behind it that's the same color as the canvas. So, go away. So yeah, so you can't really see it, and nothing's really jumping out at me. Maybe I would change that star. One thing I wanted to show you was the calculation for thinner lines is the one that we did. It's always going to be less than the original stroke, but if you want something to become thicker, because maybe you scaled it down and now you need to kind of get that vibe back again, you're going to look at the difference in them. Let's do it over here. Let's say I've scaled this down this much. But now those lines are really thin. So now you're looking at what's the difference between these two, which again is around about 50%, but we want it to be 50% more because we want it thicker, which is why in my calculation over here it's, it's more than 100%. So, the difference in size is 50, so it's actually 150. And if we come in here and 150% times by 6 is 9. So we're going to come in here, we're going to say it's 9 stroke. I'm going to take that in and we need to scale that down to around about there. And yes, the design starts kind of closing in on itself a little bit. There's not as much white space in the stars because you've made it smaller. But they are actually, that line thickness is very similar. And if you want to tweak it further, you can just come in here and start tweaking numbers, like do up one, do it down one, and see what comes up. Sometimes you have to do that too. Anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I hope, to see examples of your beautifully consistent, celebratory canvas visuals sometime soon. Thank you for listening. It was nice to see you again. Bye.